Hi again, students. So this time we are doing a video overview of the website from Grammar Bytes on the subordinate conjunction. If you're wondering what the subordinate conjunction is in the previous lectures, besides and, or, but, nor, etc., this video is for you. And we're showing you how to read the website on the subordinate conjunction, what it is, and how to use it. Let's take a look at this page. So, you clicked on the link, good job. It's going to look a little smaller than this, but I've zoomed in just to show you what it looks like, and I can write on it and show you what different things mean. You can print this page, which will be very helpful for you because it provides a list of these types of words, the conjunction, the subordinate conjunction, and it teaches you how to recognize one and also how to use it. And these are especially useful for complex sentences. Notice here, the complex sentence has two clauses, and they're different. One is the main clause, and then the other one is the subordinate clause, the dependent clause. So the dependent clause depends on the main independent clause. So the subordinate is subject to, or will follow, the main clause. And remember, the independent clause can be a sentence by itself, and that's a complex sentence when you have a main clause and an independent clause and a subordinate clause together. And you use a comma with a subordinate conjunction to connect them.
So you have 5 minutes left.
So this page provides you with a list, a big list this time, big list of subordinate conjunctions right here. So this would be your essential ingredient, the main connector between two different clauses, main and subordinate, independent and dependent, in a complex sentence. Okay. And here are some words. Take a look at these words, see if you know some of them. If you know them, you can circle the ones you know. Well, I'm going to circle all of these because I know them, but maybe you haven't seen something like in order that. So maybe you've seen like the ones we've seen would be like while and where and when and since and that. You've seen those. Because, yep, definitely seen those. Some of you have used these. Even though I've seen that, rather than I've seen that in your essays, though I've seen that. Okay, some of these you haven't used, whereas you haven't used that one, in order that you haven't used, if you haven't used, unless, whenever, wherever, whether, why, once, so that. I've seen you guys use then, before, I think you used this, even if, as, and although. So for you underline the ones that you don't know yet and circle the ones you've already used. Some way to separate the ones you already know and the ones you don't know. So for me, I use the ones don't know them with an underline and circle I know these ones. Okay. So here we see the subordinate conjunction has two jobs. So first, and notice here, this sentence shows you how to use signal words and transition words. First, what is the first job of a subordinate conjunction? It provides a necessary transition, you see, between two ideas in a sentence. So the transition will indicate either a time, place, cause and effect relationship. So that's the first job. So Remember, the first job is a transition between two ideas in a sentence. And the second job, and this is more detailed than what we have seen before, it reduces the importance of one clause. Now remember, you have a main clause and a subordinate clause. Remember, one clause is the independent, and then you have the dependent. Because the independent clause can be its own sentence and its main, these are more important.
If you didn't finish,
And then the dependent and the subordinate clause, these are less important.
But even if you get a fail,
so the subordinate conjunction makes this dependent clause, subordinate clause, less important in the sentence, and to emphasize the independent clause or the main clause is more important. See that? So this is how this web page works. It provides more detail on the subordinate conjunctions. You see a list of the words you can use as subordinate conjunctions, what kind of jobs they do, examples of these jobs, first job and second job. So subordinate conjunction once, subordinate conjunction where, subordinate conjunction because. And you can see the clause that follows after the subordinate conjunction is always going to be the subordinate clause. It helps provide more detail and transition towards the main clause, which in this sentence would be this one. So that would be the main. We have the main clause here. And then here, the main clause would be Linda clinched her jaw, like that. Okay. So read through these. You might want to use a separate page in your Cornell notes to really understand what two jobs of the subordinate conjunction is. Job number 1 with examples for number 1, and job number 2 with examples for number 2. Okay, so transitions here. Transitions here, and then the clauses bolded here are actually subordinate clauses. See here, word as, whenever, and so. It even has the logical structure on which one is more important. Burning his nose, and then which is this clause, and then blowing out the candles. So in this sentence you see, oh yeah, we are more interested, or it would catch more of our attention that Samson burned his nose when he tried to blow out the candle. Here you see Ronnie start sneezing when he tried to open the door, when he tries to open the door. So here it's not necessarily the order of the clauses that tells you which one is more important, but whether the clause has a subordinating conjunction. And when a clause has a subordinating conjunction, that's the less important one, because it's no longer an independent clause. It cannot be a sentence on its own. And the last part here is how to use punctuation in complex sentences properly. And here we it'll show you the separate common patterns. So here's pattern 1, pattern 2. Here, if you put the main clause first, then this symbol is the subordinate conjunction. So you simply add the subordinate conjunction here. If you put the subordinate clause first, that is the dependent clause, then you use the subordinate conjunction in the beginning of your subordinate clause. Well, that's what a subordinate clause does. And then you simply use a comma. So you do have a subordinate conjunction, but when you put the subordinate clause first, the subordinate conjunction comes first. If you put the subordinate clause in the second part of the sentence, it comes after the comma or without the comma. Okay? And then there's 2 more types after this. And now we're going to study a new term, a relative clause. A relative clause is related, it describes something in the main clause. And in this case, this phrase, whose rusty hatchback choked and coughed in the driveway, describes the delivery man. It doesn't describe Nicky, because we have Nicky, he paid the delivery man. And what kind of delivery man? It is a delivery man whose rusty hatchback coughed and choked in the highway. So he's driving a car, and the car is not running very well. Okay, so again, you add nothing, but you have here the subordinate conjunction, whose rusty hatchback. Here, if you have a non-essential relative clause, this is, oh, well, we have the same subject and verb, Nicky paid, but we have Fernando. It's just a person. We don't really need to know who he is, but this extra detail. Is specific. This could be any delivery man, and this one is a specific person. So if you have a specific object, you would have a non-essential relative clause. So that's when you need to add a comma before the non-essential relative clause. If you have a not specific person or object, so for example, it could be just a noun and not a name, then you're going to need to use an essential relative clause that adds detail to whatever the object is. Again, if you have any questions about relative clause and essential relative clause and non-essential relative clause, you can post on Canvas or ask me in email. This will add to your use and your skill in writing complex sentences. So now, remember, you're not only dealing with dependent and independent clause, you're not only adding a subordinate conjunction, but now you're going to have to learn also essential and non-essential relative clause. Okay. Have a read over the slide, have a read over this website, try the examples here. To see which one is not specific. And remember, if it's a not specific person, you use an essential relative clause. If If it's a specific person, you use a non-essential relative clause and a comma. Alright, again, the first part you should be familiar with because we're talking about complex sentence and subordinate conjunctions. And the next part, after main clause and subordinate clause and using commas in the right order, the essential relative clause and non-essential relative clause will be a bit harder because it's probably new to you. If you have any questions about this part, email me or post on Canvas for more information. Alright? Make sure to read this website first, try these sentences out, and use them in your assignment coming up. Alright? Good luck.